Buying land sounds simple. Find a cheap lot, build your house, and then you're good, right? Everybody wants to do that. Super easy stuff. Fact of the matter is, people get screwed over in land almost as much as houses. So if you're a first-time home buyer, especially when we're talking about land, today we're gonna be talking about that. All right, boys and girls, today we're doing a walk and talk where we talk about land here in Virginia. And as you can see in the title, it's a step-by-step guide on how to buy land. So step one is knowing your purpose. And one thing I like to do with all my clients is let's sit down and tell me what your plan is with this lot. I know that sounds simple. And sometimes it's like, I just want to shoot a gun. Cool. Sometimes I want to build a house. I want to do Airbnbs. I want to do commercial. I want to do fill in the blank. And that's all good. But one thing I always tell my clients to do is let's talk to all the counties. A prime example of this is I had a client that wanted to do a winery. So what we did was talk to all the counties and say, hey, this is the winery we're planning on building. One, do you know of any parcels that are looking to sell that would fit your plans as a county? And two, what kind of zoning do you want to see when we're talking about this? These are things that I like to talk to my client. Knowing the purpose of the property is going to determine how to go about it. If you are just buying it for, say, like shooting or riding four-wheelers, well, then we don't really care if it's buildable. And a buildable lot could be going for $50,000, $100,000. Unbuildable lot could be going for 10, but you don't have the resale value on the back end. These are all things that are running in the back of my head when you tell me what you're planning on doing. But the key takeaway here is your goal sets the pace on everything else we need to do from there on out. Step two, it's always going to be the most fun, which is how are you paying for this and what is the budget? Buying a piece of land is not like buying a house at all when it comes to loan. They're not going to have your standard mortgages that are 30 years, 5% downs, that kind of stuff. Most of the time you're going to be dealing either with private money or some sort of small bank, like a credit union, farm credit, something along those lines. Some mortgage brokers are starting to have these products, but for the most part, not really. And most of the time, depending on the improvements on the property, there are gonna be higher down payments starting at, like, let's say 15% down. That's why a lot of folks usually end up doing like a home equity line against their property or some sort of private money with family, borrowing it from that kind of scenario. And then also usually the term's going to be a little bit different too. Instead of say a 30-year term, they're going to be probably adjustable rates and something around 20 years. There could be 100 other programs out there that I don't know about, but these are all things that I've dealt with in my 14 years in real estate. I haven't found other programs. That's not saying that they're not out there though. So step number three is always going to be, how are you going to find the land now? So you have things like Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com. You have people that door knock. You have people that send out mass mailers. These are all different ways that people find land. Of course, I'm always going to recommend, go ahead and get yourself a good agent. One that knows land. That is the key. I just shot a video about how to price land, and I will tell you that most agents don't even know how to price land. So pay attention to that and find yourself an agent that's really good. If you're planning on hiring someone, now you can do it yourself and just hire an attorney to write the contract, or you can go through the listing agent, which I never recommend because they're representing the seller. Get some representation, or make sure you're really covering your butt and getting some sort of attorney to cover you on the back end. If you are a newer purchaser, now, there are investors out there that don't need anybody. They've done this 100 times. And now we lock up that property. You've made an offer. Sellers accepted it. You're under contract or in escrow, depending on who you're talking to and what parts of the country. Now it's time for your due diligence. This is what's called a study period when we're talking about land. This is, think about, people say a home inspection. This is your inspection period. This is whatever is written in the contract. Hopefully you put something in the contract that will give you time to do any and all necessary inspections. And this is what keeps you safe. Here in Virginia, again, it's called a study period, with the average is probably around 30 days to have your study period concluded. So this is your time to, one, go to the county, check on all the zoning, check with the building regulations, make sure whatever you're planning on doing, the county is cool with it. On the flip note, if we're building a house, we need to get a perk test if it's on septic. If it's on public water and sewer, now we're talking about going to the public works and making sure, what's the tap-in fee? How do I get to it? What's it gonna cost me? Those kind of things. Power is gonna be another one that's gonna be up in the air. And all these are gonna be a little bit different depending on where you're going. But some power companies will come out and give you a price. Some won't do anything until you get a building permit. But that due diligence part is the safety net of this contract. And it's really your time that if something doesn't fit or it's not going to be right for you, that is your time to bail on this contract. So keep yourself safe and make sure you build some sort of study period in there to talk about everything. And then on that too, usually you have some sort of title work. This is where a title company or an attorney is going to step in and do a title bring down, title search, make sure that there's no other liens on that property. All the property is getting paid off if need be. You're not inheriting any judgments or liens or so on and so on. And you're getting free and clear title is the biggest thing. Also, this is where we're checking for any access to that property. Let's say if there's easement or there's easements on the property for other people. These are times to check it in the actual legal work. Lastly, get the survey to kind of line up with that title work to make sure that there isn't any things that are on the property that shouldn't be there, like the neighbor built the shed on your property, or a whole nother house was put on your property. I mean, just wild things. Fences, that road shouldn't be there. If you're planning on building, get them to go ahead and mark the corners, because it's only going to be easier later down the road when they're coming back for your site plan. This is where I always recommend getting with your local real estate agent or attorney or investor who's seasoned in all this kind of stuff, and make sure you have some sort of mentorship when you're buying your first property. I hope this helps at least one person that's thinking about taking the deep dive into buying a piece of property. If you guys have any questions, you can always reach out to me directly. You can always leave a comment down. Yeah, I'm here to help.